Well, Washington and the nation continue to digest and examine the events of yesterday, where an angry mob of rioters invaded the Capitol of the United States, pushed its way into many congressional offices, including the chambers of the Senate and the House of Representatives, and forced many members of Congress to effectively take cover in different areas of the Capitol building before, in late night and early morning votes, certifying the Electoral College victory for Joe Biden. We are joined now by Representative French Hale, Republican of Arkansas. Congressman, it's good to see you again. I'm glad that you and all of the other members of Congress are safe. First of all, talk to us about your day yesterday and what you experienced.
Well, Julie, thanks for having me back. Appreciate being with you and Brian and Miles. Yesterday was an unprecedented day in modern history in the United States. I was shocked. I was working in my office getting ready to go to the Capitol to sit in the gallery and listen to the debate on the objection to the Arizona electors. Due to COVID-19, members were dispersed across the Capitol. Not everybody was concentrated in the House and Senate chambers, which I think was probably good fortune. So I was stopped by going over to the Capitol because the Capitol just at that moment went to complete lockdown, and you could hear the tear gas canisters popping in the background. And out of my office window, I could see the large crowd assembling on the west front of the Capitol. But I didn't anticipate at all that suddenly that First Amendment peaceably assembled group would essentially storm the Bastille and charge in the Capitol, overwhelm the Capitol Police, and break into our historic and treasured dome of democracy, our Capitol building, and then occupy the offices and both chambers.
Congressman, good to see you this morning. Based on what you saw yesterday and what you experienced, do you think the president is still fit for office, and do you think he should be impeached?
Well, look, I think the president's rhetoric during this post-election period and the rhetoric of some others have set expectations in an unrealistic manner that somehow Congress is in charge of who is president of the United States, which is the exact opposite of what our founders decided when they created the Constitution. They purposely balanced power and diffused power by having the electors selected in the states, having the states decide the time, place, and manner of federal elections for Congress, Senate, and of course the President of the United States. They wanted no part of the president and the vice president being dependent on some action of the legislative branch. So the framers saw their worst nightmare appear yesterday. So where rhetoric from the president on down encouraged voters to consider that, oh, the Congress might overturn the election in its ministerial role of certifying the Electoral College votes, this contributed to the environment we witnessed yesterday, and it's inappropriate. We have 2 weeks to go before the inauguration of the next president at noon on January 20th. And I hope Republicans, Democrats, led by our current president of the United States, President Trump, will create a civil, balanced, routine course of transition to power on January 20th. That's what we all need to do as federal officials here in Washington.
Congressman, do you feel over the next 2 weeks that the president should, in fact, serve out that final 2 weeks? Just based on what happened yesterday, do you think it could get worse if he remains in the office?
I understand your question. I think that what we need to do is let actions speak louder than words following the mayhem and catastrophe of yesterday. I would hope the president recognizes, once again, words have consequences. His leadership is essential. And if he acknowledges, as he did in November, that he would follow the Electoral College decision, now made not only permanent in the states, all 50 states certifying by December 14th, but by the actions of the Congress yesterday, formally accepting those results, he needs to recognize he needs to recognize the reality that we're having a transition of power on noon on January 20th, and he needs to be a part of doing that in the great American tradition. That's his responsibility.
Congressman, I'm not sure why you would expect him to change after all of this time. Throughout this 4 years of this presidency, people keep saying, well, maybe he'll grow into the presidency. Maybe he'll be more reasonable and more conventional. It hasn't happened yet. And so, what I want to ask you, sir, and I know you did not support the objections to this electoral college certification, but you have been a supporter of President Trump over his presidency. Any regrets? I mean, you talk about the rhetoric post the election. The rhetoric is not new, sir. This rhetoric has been going on for years from the president's office. The presidency has not changed him. He has changed the presidency. So do you have any regrets of your support?
Well, I respect your question. And of course, I've supported President Trump's efforts for improving our national security out of 8 years of missteps from President Obama and his efforts to improve our economy through tax and regulatory policy changes. But I've differed with the president many times, whether it's on foreign policy with Turkey and Syria or on his use of across the board tariffs. And I've certainly distanced myself and condemned his rhetoric where it's been poorly selected and poorly used on his part in a variety of instances for the 4 years he's been in office. So I hear what you're saying, but the point is that what he needs to do is what I've described. The catastrophic situation of him resigning before the office concludes on January 20th, that's a possibility, but that doesn't seem realistic to me. What is the right thing to do is working with his vice president and the cabinet, prepare for this orderly transition of power. If it doesn't happen, if we continue to see more of what we've seen yesterday from the president, then the vice president and the cabinet have their own thoughts about what they could do in that regard.
And Congressman, finally, as we move into the next administration, as a member of the Republican Party, how do you want that party to be defined? What conversations are you having with your Republican colleagues about what we want to stand for? Because I don't think it's going to be, our last Republican president told people to go walk into the Capitol and do what they wanted to. I think there's certainly a different conversation you'd like to be having with your constituents.
Well, Miles, it's an important question. And the Republican platform of the Republican Party stands for more limited government, controlled spending, a robust national security and leadership in the world, and responsibility, civil behavior, equal justice for all, and domestic tranquility here at home. That's what we're for as the Republican Party. That's what we'll advocate for in the Biden administration and in the very narrow majorities that Democrats now have in the House and Senate. I'm hopeful, Miles, that this narrow majority, a tie in the Senate, and a tiny majority for Speaker Nancy Pelosi that's going to get smaller as her members leave to join the Biden administration, I would hope that would breed an environment of better consensus making. And if we combine that with leadership, a moderate centrist leadership from Joe Biden, not far left progressive leadership, we could have an era of good feelings if you're a cup half full person like I am. That's what I'm hoping for in early 2021 as we come together, obviously, to get this economy back to work and kill the virus once and for all by getting every American vaccinated.